You all here. Now let me call this to order. Call the meeting to order. We're meeting at 14050 Olympic Drive in Clearlake, California. Meeting procedures, would like to keep things as calm and with the decorum as possible. I'd like to remind everyone that we do have an opportunity for people not here in the room to view the meeting. We have a camera over here and a couple around the room. So it is being broadcast for those who weren't able to attend. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Councilmember Slotin?
Here.
Councilmember Overton?
Here.
Councilmember Kramer?
Here.
Vice Mayor Claffey?
Here.
Mayor Purdock?
Here. Councilmember Slutin, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If you wouldn't mind remaining standing for a moment of reflection, and just like everyone to think of this month, what it means to us. I have a proclamation to provide later today. I'm just hoping that we as community members and community leaders can bring peace to the many factions that divide us, to come together as a whole, looking forward to a more unified community, unified state, and unified country. Thank you very much. Mr. Floor, any changes to the agenda?
No modifications, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Slotin, a second by Councilmember Overton. All those in favor, say aye. Vote or nay. All right, Mr. Vice Mayor, we got all the time in the world. And there it is. Madam Clerk?
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to present a proclamation declaring June 2023 as LGBTQIA+ Pride Month. LGBTQIA+ Pride Month, again, June 2023. Whereas our nation was founded on the principle of equal rights for all people, but the fulfillment of this promise has been long in coming for many Americans. Some of the most inspiring moments of our history have arisen out of various civil rights movements that have brought one group after another from the margins to the mainstream of America's society. And whereas in the movement toward equal rights for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, asexual, and the acronym LGBTQIA+ people, a historic turning point occurred on June 28, 1969, in the city of New York with the onset of the Stonewall riots. During those riots, the LGBTQIA+ citizens rose up and resisted police harassment and that arose out of discriminatory criminal laws and have since been declared unconstitutional. In the 4 decades since, civil rights for LGBTQIA+ people have grown substantially, and the LGBTQ+ Pride celebrations have taken place around the country every June to commemorate the beginning of the Stonewall riots. And whereas California has been a leader of advancing the civil rights of its LGBTQIA+ citizens, and while further progress is needed, it is important to recognize and celebrate the substantial gains that have come from this achievement. And the City of Clearlake stands with the LGBTQIA+ community in the struggle to ensure equal treatment for all and to advocate for LGBTQIA rights as human rights. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Clearlake does hereby proclaim June 2023 as LGBTQIA+ Pride Month in the City of Clearlake and advocates for the protections of all individuals, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, and be treated with dignity and respect. Dated this day, June 1st, 2023, by the City Council of the City of Clearlake. Thank you all very much. Moving on from presentations to item F, public comment. This is now the time for the public to share their opinions and ideas with the City Council. Please remember that the City Council is not able to address any items or questions put before us under public comment, as that might be a violation of the Brown Act. However, we may be able to direct you to a city staff member who could better answer your question either at a later time or at some point in this meeting. I'd also like to remind everyone that if there's an agenda item on the for the meeting tonight, we ask that you hold your comments and speak during that time of our meeting. With that said, I have no written requests for public comment, but I will take those with their hands up to come up to the podium and make your public comment. Whoever wants to come up first.
What?
Is this on the animal?
Yes.
Okay,
That's an agendized item, so
That's an agendized item, wait till the agenda.
Okay.
I didn't know if it was a code enforcement, because you've both spoken about that too. I figured I'd wait until they started.
Yeah, well,
Is there anyone who would like to speak on an issue that is not on tonight's agenda? Very well. Then anyone on the Zoom, Madam Clerk?
There's one hand raised on the Zoom. Mr. Sabatier.
Supervisor Sabatier, the time is yours. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I just wanted to give a huge kudos to the city of Clearlake. I took part in the bus walk on this past Wednesday. It was amazing. The number of kids that were involved, lined up the streets, the amount of employees that helped secure the wall from Pomo was amazing. I think that both.
Supervisor, you're breaking up. We unfortunately are losing your connection. Well, if I could translate, we had a walking school bus from Austin Park to Pomo Elementary School on Wednesday morning. And just like to thank the city staff, the city police department for a job well done. I believe there was 300 kids, and Addie, I'm sorry, Public Works, for making all that possible. Blue Zones Project, one of their directions is to get our kids out moving and walking for better health, and also for safer school access for people who walk and ride bikes. If I sum that up, Supervisor,
He was dropped from
Okay.
the Zoom, but he is back, so let's see. Go ahead, Mr. Sabatier.
Apologize for dropping out. Summed it up I just appreciate staff being a part of it. I think it's a memorable day for staff and students. I know that Councilmember Slutin was with us, and I'm sure he'll be mentioning it during his report, but it was a fabulous moment, and I appreciate the work that the city did to make that happen.
Thank you, Supervisor. Madam Clerk, anyone else wishing to speak?
There are no further hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. I will now close public comment at this time and move on to the consent agenda. Is any member of the council wishing to pull an item? Seeing none, can I have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Slotin, a second by Councilmember Kramer.
We do need to see if there's any public input on.
Oh, I apologize. Is there any public input on our consent agenda? And we'll suspend the vote for now. Seeing none, I'll bring it back. Thank you, Mr. Flora. We have a motion and a second. We'll move forward in the voting.
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to our public hearing, item H. Consideration of Resolution 2023-25, authorizing the extension of the temporary road closure of certain roads to reduce illegal dumping and to protect the environment and the public health and welfare. Mr. Flora.
I'll turn it over to Director Leba.
Thank you.
Thank you. The City Council is being asked to consider extending the closure of roads to reduce illegal dumping and to protect the environment and public health and welfare. In January of 2022, the council had a public hearing and authorized the closure of certain roads to prevent illegal dumping and other illegal activities. Before this, the city purchased thousands of feet of K-rail, construction barrier gates, and other materials to block off the area. This area that was impacted is commonly referred to as the Gobi Desert, a largely undeveloped area of the city, west of Acacia, north of Sonoma, and includes all or portions of Oleander, Mint, Peony, Toyon, and Oregon. Staff believes that the operation has been effective in controlling illegal dumping in the area and is requesting an extension be given. The California Vehicle Code requires a public hearing be conducted every 18 months to extend the road closure. Suggested recommended action is to adopt the resolution 2023-25.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Seeing none, I'll open it up. Oh, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Staff, has there been any complaints from residents in those closed-off areas?
There has been a couple from people who would like to purchase property or who own a piece of the property that they be let in to access their properties, but it's maybe one or two people.
And we can accommodate that request?
Yes.
Thank you. If there's any questions from the community, now is the time on this item to ask those questions. Please step forward to the podium. Seeing none, Madam Clerk, do we have anyone on Zoom liking to pose a question?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much. Bring it back to
Mayor?
council.
Bringing it back.
It's back.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 2023-25, authorizing the extension of the temporary road closure of certain roads to reduce illegal dumping and to protect the environment and the public health and welfare.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Kramer and a second by Vice Mayor Claffey. All those in favor? Or opposed? Aye.
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to item H8, consideration of appeal dash APCC 2023-1 by the Koi Nation of Northern California of the Planning Commission, April 25, 2023. Decision for approval of the Burns Valley Development Project. Mr. Flora.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. So, as the agenda title suggests, the Planning Commission unanimously approved the Burns Valley Development Project on April 25th of this year. And this is mainly the sports complex project that you're aware of on city property by the Burns Valley Mall. The Koi Nation of Northern California appealed that decision within a timely manner, and this public hearing was scheduled. They reached out and requested that a religious accommodation be made and it be delayed, and so we have selected next Wednesday, June 7th at 3 p.m. As a date. And so what we're asking or recommending the council do tonight is just continue the public hearing to that specific date and time.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. Any questions, staff? I'd like to open this up for public. If you have a comment on this item and the recommendation of staff to move it to June 7th, 2023, 3 p.m. in this chamber. Anyone wishing to comment? Anyone on Zoom, Madam Clerk?
There is one hand raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Robertson.
Thank you. Ms. Robertson? Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to say thank you very much for this. Oh, sorry. I am Tribal Cultural Resources Council for the Koi Nation, and on their behalf, they just asked me to come today to say thank you. We very much appreciate the religious accommodation that staff has recommended, and it's gracious, and we hope council will do it. So thank you. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and I hope all goes well. Thank you. Bring it back to council for action.
I think we want to approve the consideration of the appeal and to be moved to the next meeting on June 7th, to continue to June 7th.
Second.
I mean, I think we're supposed to have a specific date and time, so as long as you clarify it also at 3
p.m.
Yeah, June 7th at 3 p.m. in City Council chambers.
I'll second.
So I have a motion by Councilmember Slotin and a second by Vice Mayor Claffey to postpone this item and hear it on the June 7th, 2023 at 3 p.m. All in favor or opposed?
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Thank you very much. Moving on now to business, item I. We have a presentation prepared by our police department, presentation and discussion of the animal control investigation, presentation of that report. Chief Hobbs.
Mr. Mayor,
Oh,
if
go
I could
ahead.
just make some
Absolutely.
brief introductory comments. Thank you. As the council's aware, there's been various iterations of animal control services in the city of Clearlake. Under state law, the city or any local jurisdiction, city-wise at least, has no specific obligation to maintain and operate an animal shelter. There's a very narrow set of requirements under state law that we're obligated to basically, pick up dangerous animals, dogs actually specifically. But anyway, some of the various iterations that the city had contracted out to the SBCA at one point, and a number of years back, a makeshift animal shelter was created in part of the Public Works shop, as you know, which wasn't really adequate. And around 2020, the city received some funding through the U.S. Department of Agriculture to develop some new shelter facilities. And this was the 2 new building units that were installed around that time. And so the city continued to operate the shelter and provide animal control services for a period of time. Roughly a year and a half ago is when both of our animal control officers left for other positions. We were unable to recruit new officers to those positions, so we looked for alternative solutions. And at the recommendation of some of our staff at the time, we entered into an interim agreement with North Bay Animal Services out of Petaluma to provide animal control services and sort of operate the shelter. After a number of months of that agreement, the city entered into a 10-year agreement with them to provide both animal control and sheltering services for the city of Clearlake. And then, as you know, we've received a number of complaints about that service over the last several weeks, and so Lieutenant Peterson will go into the details, but I directed Chief Hobbs to have an investigation conducted into these allegations, and so tonight the police department will be presenting that report to the council and the public.
Thank you, Mr.
So
Flora.
I'll turn it over to Chief Hobbs. I don't know if he wants to make any comments.
I'm just going to add that after this investigation, which took quite a bit of time, I just wanted to say briefly, Lieutenant Peterson put a good amount of time in this investigation. The report has been provided to everyone in the council and the public via the website. Hopefully people read through the whole thing. And now I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Peterson. He's going to provide a fairly brief, in comparison of the length of the report, summary of the report, and go over some of the findings.
Thank you, Chief.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and attendance to this meeting. I want to thank you and our community for the opportunity to speak to you tonight and present you with a summary of my investigation. This presentation will be an overview and not an exact detail of the entire 96 pages of my report. The City of Clearlake and North Bay Animal Services entered a contract for animal care and control services in August of 2022. This included animal control responsibilities and the operation of the Clearlake Animal Shelter. The city has received complaints regarding the care of animals and services provided by North Bay Animal Services. On April 3rd, 2023, a letter was sent by the city manager to North Bay Animal Services to immediately address the number of animals in the shelter, the use of crates, access to the facility by the public, laundry, and cleaning protocols. North Bay Animal Services staff began to address the issues noted in a letter provided by the city manager. This is where my investigation started. So the methods used and the scope of my investigation was regarding the complaints received and oversight of the North Bay Animal Services provided to the city of Clearlake. I used standard investigative methods, which included interviews, observations, review of documents and records. Additionally, I conducted inspections of the facility, a tour of an outside facility, and research from outside sources. During my investigation, 22 people were contacted. Out of those people, I conducted interviews with 19 and was provided a type statement for 1. 2 of the other people had no direct information regarding this investigation. I conducted numerous no-notice inspections of the shelter and was provided with a tour of the animal control facility in Mendocino County. I reviewed 465 pages of documents and photographs, and from my research, I reviewed 211 pages of outside information. I also reviewed social media pages and posts associated with agencies and people from this investigation. Through my investigation, I identified 10 specific allegations from the complainants. These allegations are: number 1, Clearlake Animal Shelter is over capacity and animals are being held in holding areas which do not meet the standards for housing, such as small crates. Number 2, North Bay Animal Services does not provide spaying and neutering of the animals at the Clearlake Animal Shelter. Number 3, North Bay Animal Services does not provide veterinary services to the animals at the Clearlake Animal Shelter. Number 4, medications are not provided to animals at the Clearlake Animal Shelter. Number 5, The Clearlake Animal Shelter has an outbreak of Giardia affecting the animals. Number 6, North Bay Animal Services provides expired food to animals at the Clearlake Animal Shelter. Number 7, lack of supplies and food at the Clearlake Animal Shelter. Number 8, North Bay Animal Services did not follow the UC Davis recommended cleaning guidelines. Number 9, the lack of responsiveness to the community by North Bay Animal Services. Number 10, no clear chain of command, a lack of supervision of staff and conditions at the Clearlake Animal Shelter by North Bay Animal Services. Regarding allegation 1, North Bay Animal Services was housing approximately 80 dogs in part due to an investigation into a dog hoarder where approximately 20 dogs were seized. The Animal Control Shelter's new portion, commonly referred to as the L, is designed to house approximately 18 large dogs. There are kennels in the rear of the facility and in the Public Works Building, which was the original area the City of Clearlake housed animals prior to the new portion being built. Even with the warehouse and outside kennels being used, there were twice the capacity of what the whole facility should house and 4 times the capacity of what the new portion should house. North Bay Animal Services was contacted and removed the dogs from the small kennels, transferred some of the dogs to rescues, fosters, and outside of the facility. The population was reduced to approximately 62 dogs. At the time of my report, the shelter population had fluctuated from 62 to 70 dogs. As of today, the population has been reduced to 58 dogs after North Bay Animal Services transferred the dogs to adoption, foster, and rescue partners. Regarding allegation 2, North Bay Animal Services has a standing appointment on Wednesday with Clearlake Veterinary Clinic for spay and neuter services, which they use. This was confirmed by the Clearlake Veterinary Clinic. The appointment is for 2 to 4 animals a week, depending on the number of veterinarians they have on staff that day. There are no 24-hour emergency veterinary services in Lake County. When services are needed, North Bay Animal Services uses out-of-county emergency veterinary services. The lack of 24-hour emergency veterinary service for our community has also been experienced by the Clearlake Police Department Canine Unit when after-hour emergency veterinary care was needed. For allegation 3, North Bay Animal Services has provided veterinary services for animals at the shelter prior to and since the initiation of the contract between the city and North Bay Animal Services. From January of 2023 to April of 2023, they have spent $20,717.36 on services at Clearlake Veterinary Clinic, which was confirmed by the Clearlake Veterinary Clinic. For comparison, the amount spent on veterinary services during the last 3 years the city operated the shelter was from $27,712 to $36,194 per year. North Bay Animal Services is on track to spend over $60,000 this year on services. There was a time when North Bay Animal Services had an unpaid bill with the Clearlake Veterinary Clinic, which suspended spay and neuter appointments for a couple of months early this year. This was due to North Bay Animal Services' clerical error and was remedied. According to Clearlake Veterinary Clinic staff, this also has happened when the shelter was under the control of the city and is not uncommon. Only the spay and neuter appointment day was suspended, but the clinic still saw animals for other veterinary services during this time. For allegation 4, there was no evidence provided or located to support this allegation. Animals at the shelter are provided with medications by a veterinarian during appointments or by staff at the shelter as directed. Logs are kept that note the medications provided. For allegation 5, there was an outbreak of Giardia which affected several dogs in the shelter. The animals were seen by a veterinarian and provided medication prescribed by Clearlake Veterinary Clinic. Clearlake Veterinary Clinic also provided North Bay Animal Services with additional medication to provide additional dogs as symptoms would be discovered by shelter staff. The infected animals were provided medication that relieved them of their symptoms. As of the time of this report, there is no current Giardia outbreak at the shelter. For allegation 6, North Bay Animal Services purchases new food and is also provided with large trucks of donated food from stores. This food consists of damaged packaging and is sometimes expired. This is similar to when the shelter was run by the city. The food is reviewed to determine if it is still of usable quality, and if determined to be unusable, it is disposed of. Like other shelters, North Bay Animal Services does not intentionally provide expired food to the shelter or animals they care for. For my investigation, it is not uncommon for shelters to use donated expired food or food with damaged packaging, as this is a cost-saving measure to feed animals. Regarding allegation 7, there was an allegation of no cleaning supplies at the shelter. From my review, there was adequate and appropriate cleaning supplies and chemicals at the facility during each one of my inspections. Allegation 8, the UC Davis standards are suggested standards for cleaning of shelters, which is an adopted standard by the city and North Bay Animal Services. I spoke to professionals who confirmed that daily deep cleaning of the facility with chemicals is not required or safe to do. Cleaning of feces and urine on the floor is adequate on a rotational basis, which is an industry standard and is in accordance with the UC Davis suggestions. Harsh chemicals used daily can leave a residue, even when rinsed properly, which can affect the dogs. Additionally, animals need to be able to acclimate to their own smells, which are washed away from daily deep chemical cleaning. It is an industry standard to not use deep chemical cleaning on a daily basis for general cleaning. This is not the same during infectious disease control. The professionals I spoke to at another facility I reviewed said that when their facility is full, they wash the adoptable dog area daily and rotate between the other two parts of their facility each day. During my investigation, kennel staff at the Clearlake Animal Shelter were cleaning the entire facility daily within industry standards. For allegation 9, it is clear with the influx of animals at the shelter that North Bay Animal Services does respond to the community and takes dogs. This is one of the reasons the shelter is continually at such capacity. There were several reports provided during this investigation that showed a lack of community response. From my investigation, I found this to be due to a lack of follow-up from North Bay Animal Services animal control officers dedicated to the city of Clearlake. An example is a vicious dog report in our community. I was called by the reporting party who reported the lack of response. I contacted the animal control officer who advised they had picked up the dogs in question earlier in the week. The perception of the lack of response by North Bay Animal Services in this case was because of the lack of follow-up by the animal control officer with contacting the reporting party to make them aware of what was done. This is currently being addressed by North Bay Animal Services with the training of an on-site supervisor for Clearlake Animal Shelter. This leads me into allegation 10. From my investigation, it seems that many of the issues alleged could have been resolved quicker or would not have occurred if there was a direct on-site supervisor to make decisions and address the issues in a timelier manner. The director of North Bay Animal Services is the direct supervisor for the shelter. However, he is not always at the shelter, and he is a supervisor for the other services North Bay Animal Services provides outside of Lake County. Communication regarding issues are addressed when brought to him via text, phone calls, or emails, or through the Petaluma Dispatch. This seems to have caused miscommunication and lack of communication in providing timely service. With this, the director of North Bay Animal Services has recognized the need of an on-site supervisor, which is why there is a staff member being trained in this position. Through my investigation, there are additional findings outside of the core complainants that I had received. A review of the Clearlake Police Department records show that there has only been one citation issued for animal control-related crimes since the contract began with North Bay Animal Services. This includes during a time an experienced animal control officer who worked for the city was working for North Bay Animal Services. It was found that animal control officers have used warnings and counseling of animal owners to resolve issues. This is clearly not effective, and the need for strict enforcement of negligent animal owners is needed. The lack of enforcement has contributed to animal owners neglecting their responsibility and care of their animals. North Bay Animal Services Administration has been notified regarding this, and an increased oversight of enforcement citations issued will be conducted moving forward. Additionally, strategies have been discussed with North Bay Animal Services, including special enforcement days with additional animal control officers to provide focused enforcement of negligent animal owners. Like how increased enforcement, not warnings, of traffic laws show a reduction in speeding vehicles and traffic collisions, the enforcement of animal control-related crimes should show the same results. During the investigation, a past animal control officer alleged an injured dog had been held in the animal control vehicle overnight at the direction of their supervisor. This was in August of 2022, at the beginning of the contract with North Bay Animal Services. The animal control officer said he did this even though he knew it was wrong. The past animal control officer's statement was in contradiction to what another past employee said about this incident. The other past employee said the animal control officer had carried the dog into the new portion of the shelter that night, and the dog was transported to a veterinarian the next day where it received services. Photographs of the injured dog were received by me along with the original incident from the Clearlake Police Department's computer-aided dispatch. No evidence was provided regarding the communication between the animal control officer and their supervisor, as there are conflicting statements about whether the dog was left on the animal control vehicle overnight. This portion of the allegation is inconclusive. The need for the animal to receive veterinary care was clear, but it is unknown what was exactly communicated with the supervisor. This is another example of the need for direct on-site supervisors to address issues like this in a timely manner and also prevent the potential for miscommunication between staff and decision makers. The locking mechanism to the shelter was found to be in disrepair. This allowed unauthorized access to the shelter. This unauthorized access is not only a security concern for the animals, but also the entire facility and the areas of the public works yard. This was immediately addressed by North Bay Animal Services and has since been replaced. This leads to my next finding. Volunteers and citizens had unsupervised access to the shelter, including the public works yard. As I just said, this causes safety and security concerns. The shelter houses animals which are alleged to have bitten people and are aggressive. It is not safe for volunteers and the public to walk around the shelter because the chance that they could be bit or injured if they were to approach one of these animals unknowingly. Additionally, speaking to outside professionals, unfamiliar people to the animals causes unneeded stress. When I was provided a tour of the Mendocino Animal Shelter, it was described to me that dogs need about 16 hours of rest. This is hard when new smells and people are continually injected into their environment, causing the dogs to become stressed, excited, and barking. When I was there, it was relatively quiet in the kennels while the staff were actively working, moving through, and cleaning. When I walked into the kennel area with the staff, the dogs became excited and began barking excessively. This is similar to my experience with our shelter. It is an industry standard that unauthorized people are not allowed full access to a shelter, not only for the previously noted reasons, but also to prevent theft of equipment, theft and harm to animals, tracking in and spreading of disease, and many other reasons. With this, it is important for unauthorized people to not have unsupervised and full access to the shelter. This is not to prevent the public from seeing what is going on. It is for safety, security, and operations within an industry standard. This has since been addressed by North Bay Animal Services with limiting access to the kennel areas of the shelter by unauthorized personnel. From my investigation, I have found that the overpopulation of our shelter is not an anomaly. Regionally, rescues and shelters are at capacity or overfilled due to an influx of animals. There has been some research and belief that the COVID-19 pandemic and economy has played a part in this. This has been explained because people are now going back to work and can't dedicate the time to their animals or can't afford to keep their animals. I don't believe, nor do local professionals believe this to be the complete case. In closing, animal care and control isn't a new problem for our community, as the amount of unspayed and unneutered animals, the amount of irresponsible pet owners, and roaming dogs has been a struggle the community has been dealing with for years. It was overwhelming for the Lake County Animal Control and the SPCA when they were working with the City of Clearlake. No single government agency or outside organization can completely deal with all the animals in our community, regardless of who is in control of the animal care and control services, because of the limited resources that can be provided by a single organization. This is not a problem that happened overnight and cannot be fixed overnight. It will take the community working together, not in opposition. Like my experience with any other services government provides, it is not successful without the support, hard work, and partnership of the entire community. The help from nonprofits like the Lake County Animal Coalition, the City of Clearlake Animal Association, along with regional rescues, volunteers, foster families, and caring community members, many of who are in the audience today, have always supplemented the limited resources our city has. This continued passion and partnership is what it will take for our community to be successful in everything we do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Council, any questions of staff at this point? Councilmember Slotin,
I have one. Does Mendocino provide 24-hour service?
turn your mic on.
Does Mendocino County provide 24-hour service? Veterinarian service?
So Mendocino County has more animal services available to them. They have, they contract with 7 different local veterinarians and have dedicated on-site days with veterinarians. But their resources are different in their county than for ours.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Claffey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So reading through this report, it seems like a lot of the community's concerns were founded. There was a confluence of issues here that I think really did put our shelter in a poor light. I think these problems, though, are situational as opposed to systemic, and in some cases, the hoarding, the gap in spay and neutering, broken laundry equipment, the illness, the outbreak there, and then lack of communication are all very real issues. And I'm glad that through the pressure from the community, the work of our police department, we've been able to resolve a good chunk of these. Lieutenant Peterson, I had a question around the amount spent by North Bay. $20,000 in the last 4 months here is a significant amount. Why, as you were doing your investigation, why do you feel like, if North Bay is spending this much on veterinary services, why do you feel like there was the perception that they were not treating the animals properly?
Could you be more specific of the
Well,
treating
reading through some of the-
regarding the veterinary care?
Yep, so reading through some of the interviews, it did seem like a few folks that you did interview did raise concerns about veterinary care. Given, you know, the amount spent on veterinary care in these last few months, why do you think that perception existed?
I believe part of it would have been because of the unpaid bill and believing that, you know, because of that portion where, you know, no, they're not coming on the Wednesday, when those Wednesdays appointments were gone. That was part of the perception. Some of it was hearsay, you know, they didn't pay bills, so we're not accepting animals, but not getting the entire story of how or where we're not accepting animals from. And this is only with the Clearlake Veterinary Clinic. As has been described during my investigation, there was an emergency that was needed where the animal control officer met with another animal control officer in Calistoga to transport an animal to an out-of-county facility. So it's, you know, my focus was, you know, for the main veterinary care that is received. So there is more that's spent, that this is the main veterinary care just with our local veterinarian.
Any concerns about triaging the condition of animals? So I know in your report you said that non-emergency situations, they make an appointment with the appropriate services, and when that time comes, they take the animals. Any concerns around triaging the different conditions?
I believe that there can always be improvement where for staff to be trained to be able to evaluate better. I mean, the best person would be a veterinarian, but, you know, not having the ability to have an on-site veterinarian due to the cost and lack of veterinarians in our community, you know, that's difficult. So, you know, it could be potential for something more training to help the kennel staff be able to evaluate maybe differently.
When the city was running the shelter, and this, I know this is a new assignment for you, any awareness of whether or not we had any special deals with veterinary services, or we got services at a discounted rate that might distort this number a bit?
Yes, when the city ran animal control, at various times we had contracts with different veterinarians, whether it was Clearlake Veterinary Clinic or Middletown Animal Hospital. We would use other ones to fill in additionally. It just depended on the year. Sometimes we had contracts, sometimes they didn't want to be in contract with us. And then also there was services done through the City of Clearlake Animal Association, who had, I don't know if they had actual written contracts with the local vets, but they did many things to those vets also.
Great, thank you, Chief. I think that's it for now, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Kramer?
Yes, thank you for that report, Lieutenant Peterson. This is a difficult question. We talked, and you're talking to the veterinarians in the report. I know that the long-term solution, they believe, is spaying and neutering to reduce the populations, but this is an extraordinary point right now, and I know that at least several of them mentioned euthanasia, and you didn't just mention that in your report now. Do you think that that's something that we need to be looking at? I realize that North Bay is a no-kill shelter, and as an animal lover myself, I hate the thought of it, but is it necessary at this point?
So if you're looking at it, there's a couple different issues that there is with the no-kill philosophy. No kills doesn't mean zero kill. It does allow for 10% of animals to be euthanized. But as you've heard from our community, there's a large amount of dogs, when they get into a pack mentality, they become aggressive. And aggressive dogs are not safe to be able to be released in the community. They're not going to get better being essentially put into a prison environment. You know, it's a shelter. They're not going to be treated the same as if they were at a home. So with the dynamics we have in our community, I believe that there is a need for looking at that. From speaking to the other facility over in Mendocino, speaking to Chief Hobbs, how hard it is on the staff, especially kennel technicians, and even speaking to North Bay Animal Services, when the kennel technicians, they're caring for these dogs. The girls that work down there are amazing. I could not do their job, and I've been spit on, called all sorts of names throughout my career, and I could not do their job with the amount of passion that they have. And to then have to sit there and look at an animal that they've cared for weeks, days, months on end is very difficult. So finding the resources, it's the people to do it as well. Mendocino County, they rotate between 8 different people or 7 different people. So it's not any one person because of the anguish it would cause. So there is a human aspect to euthanasia, even though it's dealing with the animals.
Absolutely agree. I think in one part of the report, it talked about the process of, I think, 4 or 5 different people that were in on a decision before it was made to euthanize. And it's still going to be difficult, I realize that. I hate the thought of it, but as you say, there's aggressive dogs that are basically have a life sentence of being in a kennel because they're aggressive, they can't be adopted. There are dogs that have terminal illnesses.
Well, the staff member I spoke to, he because he has had, sometimes members go, I could work with the dog, and it would be made comments, if you're willing to bring your family here and open up that kennel door, if then we can decide that dog could be safe, and that's one of the things you have to look at, because if you were to release that dog into the community, it could potentially hurt someone, and so yeah, it's not just that, but also you have that animal that you're housing and you're potentially using up that space to where an adoptable dog could be given a better opportunity. So that part of it is not an easy solution. There's plenty of research. UC Davis, which I put in my resources, has had research on this. PETA has done research on this, that no-kill animal shelters are just not a feasible option. They just have that's been the new standard now.
Thank you, Lieutenant Peterson.
Councilmember Overton.
So, and that's kind of where I was going to go to. I think we have to look at, there has to be a certain time. One, our shelter isn't that large. We need to start figuring out when our capacity hits a point and then the dogs have been there 4 to 6 weeks, something has to be done. And yeah, nobody wants to euthanize. I don't think any of us do. We all love our animals and everything. But it is at a humane state, we have to start looking at that. I think we need to create some type of group to start making these decisions. It's not like we wanted to do this, but I think it's time that we have to. You know, if they're adoptable, we need to try to move them. I know that we have a whole group here of people that love to help, you know, adopt these dogs out. We need to start utilizing them better, maybe create some kind of a group that we can start, you know, doing some more communication. What I see here is the most critical thing to me is the lack of communication between staff and employees. I see that that's been, you know, a very critical part. We need to make sure that that's fixed and that there's either there, you know, there's employee meetings and stuff. We all do it, you know, and so it seems to me like there needs to be better communication here. We need to have better oversight at this facility, you know. I do believe we need to work better with these people who are willing to help us get these dogs out and adopted. If we get these aggressive dogs, I'm sorry, I don't believe in letting anybody take them and train them unless they're taking them off the facility and taking responsibility. I don't want them training them on our property and us be responsible for them to be attacked or somebody else to be attacked because they're out of a cage. We need to really look at that type of thing. I think that's why we need to create a group that makes these decisions, you know.
There are some rescues that do take on those challenging dogs. So it isn't just that we
If I
have
could
to
just have some
euthanize
quiet
them.
in the gallery, please. Thank you.
There are, like I said, there are rescues. The issue with that is when they have space. So if they're full, we have to wait, you know, or North Bay has to wait. But there are some of those facilities, and like, so it's that balance. And as noted in the report, North Bay Animal Services has a specialist that went to college for behavioral analysis of dogs and things. So, you know, making sure that you have those dedicated professionals, a veterinarian, the kennel tech who actually deals with the animal, that's what Mendocino focuses on as well, because having a kennel technician be part of the conversation, because they actually are the ones that see the dog every day. So, you know, and they have, you know, are able to give a little bit clearer input.
So did they tell you how long, let's say we have an aggressive dog, you know, and how long, and you have a facility that you could move it to, but they're full, how long do you keep that good aggressive dog? How much more aggressive is it gonna get by being caged up? A dog's gonna get aggressive just by being caged up. You take a good dog and it can get aggressive by being caged up. So how long do we give? I think those are the questions that we have to have answered, like, or protocol. Protocol needs to be put in place so that we have some kind of a guideline of what's gonna be thing, and like I said, a group of people who can sit down and say, this is the steps that need to be happened. So I think I'd like to see some protocols put in place on what we can do with this here. We have to start, I mean, I hate to say it, but if our kennels get so full like they've been, there has to come a point where we can't take on animals. I mean, that's just the way it is. We have to get to that point. But I think the communication with the public to let them know why we're doing that. I think that's a lot of the problem here too, is no communication with the public. So I think we need to start at our council meetings saying, okay, we're full, please don't bring your animals down, you know, something like that. I mean, we really have to start this communication out there, but we definitely need to, I'm sorry, but not giving out citations is definitely not the, you know, the answer here. We need to definitely be giving out. I know across the highway, I've been told like 3 times in just the last 3 or 4 days of some aggressive pit bulls over there that are jumping over people's fences, attacking their animals, you know, and stuff. And I was told again today the same thing. So, you know, that obviously is an area over there that needs to be more. Who's patrolling? I haven't seen an animal control person out, so do we have one that's even out anymore?
Yes, and so speaking.
Please. Go ahead, Lieutenant.
2 things to start with. You were asked, you know, about time limits for animals. It's every professional I've talked to, from Mendocino veterinarians and including North Bay Animal Services, made it very clear, animals do not have an expiration date. If they have the ability to care for, house, and save that animal, and work with that animal, every facility and professional I've talked to will do that. It has to be a case-by-case basis for that portion. Regarding the aggressive dogs in the avenues, North Bay is aware. They actually had contacted us recently because of the nature of these dogs. They've been trying to track where they are because they haven't been, we can't get a dedicated spot where these animals are, but they are actively doing it, and we're working in partnership on the police department side to assist with that, because it's no different than when someone calls about a prowler in their neighborhood for the police department. You could drive there and they're gone. We have to work, again, just like I said in my report, this is a community issue. It's gonna take a community to solve. And hopefully it can be resolved before anything worse occurs.
So, and I have one more thing, personal experience. Dog gets hit on the car, gets hit on the road. UPS guy's trying to get the dog, keep it calm and not have it. I call animal control, which of course goes, and luckily for me, mine was answered. Unfortunately for me, there was no pickup, there was no help, and I get a email from them the next day to ask me to file a report, to request. It's like, okay, we have an emergency situation, the dog has been hurt. So do we not have somebody here this was during the day, so it wasn't like night or anything, this was during the day, like 11 o'clock in the morning. So is there somebody that's gonna be around to help with these type of situations? I don't think I'm asking you guys, I'm asking you.
So, and that's part of the issues that we're addressing, is the communication and making sure that the response is occurring. We had some experienced staff from when they worked for the city, working for North Bay, and, they're not currently there in full capacity. So we don't have the same, it's that learning curve for a new person coming in. Those are issues that clearly need to be addressed. And speaking to North Bay Animal Services Administration, they recognize that. And that, like you had said, that's going to take with the continued oversight to make sure that these things are taken care of.
Okay, thank you very much, and great job on your report.
Thank you. Councilmember Slotin.
First of all, an excellent report, very thorough and very complete. But I have one question. Reading through all your material, there seems to be both an overlap in support for the shelter.
Turn your mic on.
An overlap between support for the shelter between the City of Clearlake Animal Association and North Bay Animal Services. And I think reading through all the paperwork, there's also some friction between the two of them on what they're supposed to do. Did you find anywhere some documentation that say how those two entities work together for? No. Maybe that's partly
No,
needed.
there's no documentation of, for those. Those are two separate entities. From my investigation, when the City of Clearlake was running the shelter, some staff members created the City of Clearlake Animal Association. They worked in partnership with the city in capacities. As noted, we would only spend so much to care, for the veterinary care of animals, because we have a budget that we can only spend so much. So they would supplement those things. There's things that the staff wanted to, it's a shelter, but they wanted to make, even though the dogs are in there, those staff members wanted to make the lives better for the dogs. So they would bring in toys and things that a typical shelter does not provide, which was a great benefit. When North Bay Animal Services then came in, the kind of way, what I found is you have now two, not competing, but you have two separate nonprofits working at the same address, where one is contracted, one is not. And the one that is contracted, it's their facility, their rules, and the other didn't have as much carte blanche, I guess you would say. So it was just a difference in philosophies and views of how things were going to be done, and I think it was just a continued friction from there. I don't know how to resolve that. It would take just people ultimately coming together for what's the best for our community.
Thank you.
Any other comments? At this time, I'd like to open it up for public comment. I would like to remind everyone, so everyone gets a chance to speak, that we do have a time limit with 3 minutes. Ask that everyone respect that time limit. Also ask that if someone brings up an item, discusses it, or makes a good presentation that you agree with, but you'd still like to speak, maybe you could just say, I agree with that last person, and sit down, rather than reiterating what we've already heard. That way we get everybody a chance to speak and address the council. So at this time, is there a member of the public who would like to address the council on this report? Yes, ma'am. One at a time, or are you a tag team?
We're a tag team.
Okay.
We each get 3 minutes, correct?
You can, if you need a support person there, sure.
Yes.
Go ahead, Rita.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rita, and I want to get to the subject where you were saying about North Point and Charmaine's organization. Everything was all right until I did a big mistake, I guess. I gave my 501c the money that was left for her organization, so she was going to spay and neuter. And that gentleman, Mark, was very, very upset. And I mean, I'm telling you all this. He wanted her to take that money and put it in his 501c. And this is when all the friction started. And the communications with that gentleman is terrible. I mean, it's really, really bad. And if he's going to be in charge, he has to be in charge. When you call him up 8 times about all these dogs in this person's house, and I said, all I want you guys to do is come inside them, so I'll take the dogs, but you guys won't have to put them in your shelter. We'll find homes for them. Do you know what was said to me? Gee, that's really good. I'm going to have the officer call you tomorrow. Nobody ever called. Nobody. And this has been going on all along. And this is what the problem is. You know, we care about our animals. We care about this city. And it's a shambles right now. And we've got to do better. And we have to get together. We have to get together, and we have to work to make it better. And that gentleman, though, he should be here at this meeting. He should show his face.
He's here.
Oh, is he here? Where are you? Well, I have to tell you, sir, you even gave me your
Speaking to the mic, please, Rita.
Oh, okay. He even gave me his private number like we were going to go on a date. You call me up on my cell, and I will talk to you. I waited for him to call me the next day, and guess what? He never called.
Okay.
And this goes on and on and on. And you know what? You can't do business with somebody like that. You can't do business. He's got to step up to the plate, and he should come here once a month when we have our little meeting, and he has to sit down, and we have to say what's going on, because we live here. We can take care of it. And then when they were saying about the food being expired, you can have a bag of food for 2 years, and it's not expired. I mean, the date is expired, but the food is still good. So, you know, I've picked up a lot, and I've given to people. Okay, I've given it to shelters and things like that. So, you know, there's no problem there. But the main thing is the communications. We have to get together. There's people that care a lot. You know, I care about this city. I care about the city, and it's terrible there. And we should actually get funds started so we can get a nice animal control, because that animal control is not a good place. That's all I wanted to say. I had a lot more to say, but you did you did what you had to do.
Thank you, Rita.
You're welcome.
Stay right here.
Okay,
You
all
stay.
right, all right.
My name is Jean Yanich. I'm here tonight in response to North Bay Animal Services report by Lieutenant Peterson that was made public yesterday, May 31st. I want to thank Lieutenant Peterson for his in-depth interview and attention to the numerous complaints of North Bay Animal Services. What was very disturbing was that of the 10 allegations against North Bay, the narrative was spun in a way to disrespect and insult the integrity of the witnesses, always explained away as if Mark Scott was writing the rebuttal. An excuse for every allegation. There were 5 additional findings of concern. That was very disturbing. The fact that 1 citation has been written since North Bay received the contract almost 2 years ago. How can that be possible? How can roaming packs of dogs killing people's animals, attacking children, result in 1 citation? It appears every finding of concern is explained away by Lieutenant Peterson. The citizens of Clearlake and the animals deserve much better than they're getting now. I ask the City Council to focus on the witness statements. Are they all lying? Are the findings of this report unbiased, or is it an attempt to sweep everything under the rug as if it never happened? The City of Clear Lake needs to have an oversight committee consisting of concerned citizens that will demand transparency from whoever ends up handling the animal controls issue for the city. In closing, the witness statements are very compelling, giving the community the needed resources to pursue further legal action.
And then another thing, because I didn't use my 3 minutes. Charmaine was wonderful there. She loves those animals and she took good care of them. Okay, and a lot of things went down on her that shouldn't have, and that didn't come up to anybody saying what went on with the people that work there for her. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this matter? Step forward.
My name is Charlene Witham, and I'd like to know, is this just a dog shelter? There's no mention of cats anywhere. We have a big problem in this town with cats. A lot of people feeding cats. And I'd like to know, Charmaine is here tonight, maybe she can answer this now because we've been trying to get it out of her for months. Where did the money that Rita gave her, where'd that money go? It was supposed to be used for spay and neuter clinics. They haven't, they're for dogs. And there was like 10 spaces opened up. That's not helping. And Mark Scott, he puts it on a list, and the list didn't help. We started in October trying to get these animals taken care of. And now I've got at least 20 cats that I know, kittens that I know of, out of the 20 that I had before. And those are just the ones I've seen so far. I need help. Nobody's helping.
If you could speak into the microphone, please.
My name's Kay Lopez. I have to agree with your first speaker. I felt the same way when I read, and I haven't read the whole thing, but you put on your investigation that animals were put in small crates due to a hoarding issue. That wasn't true. I was there 5 years ago, and this thing was still going on in that auto repair shop. Only this time, the poop and the urine was so thick, and I can show you pictures of it, that they couldn't get out of it. Even up on the step thing, solid poop and urine. Now that takes a while to build that up, so you can't tell me they were going in every day to clean it. I don't buy it. I worked in a shelter. Then you had written the play yard in the investigations as light rain. That wasn't true. That was storming that day, beating down. That was not light rain, and the dogs could not get out. So this, I did feel the same way she did. It's like, well, this is what happens when the city investigates the city. And I was livid. What I said and what I saw, I brought you pictures. I showed you everything. So, you know, many of us have come before, not just you, but all of you, with deep concerns over these dogs that are being neglected, and instead of showing concern, you acted like we were undeserving of your time. Your first remarks is, we don't want to lose the contract. What about the dogs? You're the leaders of this city, and whether or not you are inconvenienced by us, it is your job. We depend on you to act as though you care and not respond with your 3 minutes are up and no further contact. On page 13, 2G of your AC contract, it states citations are required to be written, yet it appears little to none are written in an area where children catch the school bus and many citizens are attacked by vicious dogs running free. Why? So many violations in this contract, including your own Clearlake Municipal Code. What is it you're afraid of losing in this contract? Actually, what are you getting? in this contract. It is your responsibility to make sure your local, state, and federal laws are enforced, and they are not. Now, I want to ask you, when you take a dog out of the shelter, is he neutered or spayed? Are you giving tickets to have that dog neutered or spayed? Or are you just taking the dog, giving it to a rescue, and letting them come up with the money? I mean, what happens? And my pictures, I think Melissa's going to give me her 3 minutes.
So if you're asking questions, this is an agendized item, so we
Okay,
are able to.
nobody's answering.
You're not giving them a chance to answer.
Okay.
So Lieutenant Ryan, or Lieutenant Peterson, if you're able to answer, or any, another member of your staff, please let us know.
Let's start with your first question.
Okay.
Are you talking about regarding the citations? I agree, there needs to be citations issued.
There does need to be
If you could speak into the
That was
microphone, ma'am.
That was in the report. There's only been one, and enforcement
Right.
is needed.
I understand that, but if you're in that area there and there's a pit bull or anything attacking somebody, how hard is that to find?
So, Mr. Mayor, just a point of order here. It's almost impossible for the city clerk to time public comment with a back and forth, so I would recommend we limit it to 3 minutes, and if there's questions on the table that staff feel like they need to respond to, then that can happen at that time.
Thank you, sir.
So will that question not be answered as far as the
Well,
spay and
if you
neutering?
take your seat, he can answer the questions that you've
Okay.
posed.
So regarding the spay and neutering, I think Mark Scott might be able to answer that better because he actually runs the, regarding when animals are released or not for the spaying and neutering and how that procedure is.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Mr. Scott, would you like to address those questions, or? If you don't mind coming up.
Hear him up here.
Yeah, if we could hear you up here. Just a second.
I signed up for 3 minutes on that little paper. I would like to hear the rest of what she has to say.
So, also a point of order that we're not permitting, sharing minutes is not permitted, so each individual person is entitled to their 3 minutes. If they want to use those, they can use those.
Thank you, counsel. Ma'am, if you would like to present Ms. Lopez's questions, you're able to do that. Anyone else wanting to address council? Please step forward. Yes, sir, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Bill Morgan.
Pull the mic up. Thank you.
My name is Bill Morgan, and I have a really big concern with the loose dogs running around and terrorizing the town. I like to go for walks around town, and there are areas that I won't go into anymore because people have been attacked there. And nothing seems to be done. I had 2 pit bulls roaming around in front of my house a few months ago, and it took me 8, 9, 10 calls to North Bay Animal Services before I got a response. Finally, I got a call back, and I was told, oh, I think I know those dogs. And the truck pulled up later that day in front of a house down the street, and I went down and talked to the animal control officer, and she said, oh, they're young dogs, and this will be taken care of now. And 2 weeks later, they got out one more time, and I called, and they haven't been out since, but I just don't feel like anybody got a citation. In fact, she told me at that point, I'm just giving them a warning, and there will be a citation next time. And I hear story after story of people being attacked, dogs being killed, one thing and another. And I know that the shelter is undersized or overcrowded, however you'd like to look at it. I think the city needs to allocate more money to improve and expand the shelter and to get more animal control officers out on the street, and that the police department needs to be issuing citations so that people feel the sting when they're irresponsible. Thank you.
Thank you. Please come up to the, if you'd like to speak, you don't need to raise your hand and be called upon. Just in an orderly fashion, come up to the microphone so we can hear your opinions and ideas. Thank you.
My name's Denise Gilmer. I live in the Avenues. On May 21st, I started a Facebook group, Clearlake Community Canine Coalition, to address the stray dog problem, which is not only a public safety issue, but a humane one as well. We have almost 80 members who are tired of dogs running loose and creating a community hazard. My incentive to start the group came from seeing 3 pit bulls drag a neighbor's small dog out of its yard and down the street. The victim dog's owner and myself were able to drive the pits off the small dog, and it survived. Once the pits lost their prey, they turned their attention to a yard full of toddlers and small dogs next door. I emptied a can of pepper spray on the dogs to little effect. The dogs finally stopped focusing on the yard when I had the parents take the kids and dogs inside. At that point, the pit bull's owner arrived with a smirk on his face and threatened to kill the victim dog's owner. I called 911 due to an imminent human fight, and the pit owner fled along with his dogs. Unfortunately, the police did not arrive until the situation was over. The following week, a loose dog attacked children at a bus stop on 32nd and Phillips, and my understanding is that a couple of children were bitten and also a police officer. My goal has been to document the problem and share information on what we can all do to help and create a culture of responsible dog ownership. It will take everyone working together on many levels to achieve this goal. While a functional animal control department is essential to dealing with the problem, we need other tactics as well. Group member Jackie Iddings and myself wrote an action plan to help the city work on the issue. A couple of highlights from the plan are: number 1, improving the city's communication with the residents. Right now, there is a void of information coming from the city. That void is filled in with information coming mostly from social media, which is leading to misinformation and discontent. Some accurate data from the city, such as enforcement actions taken by the police and animal control, data on citations in the future, and warnings by animal control, and outcomes of dog bite cases would show the community action is being taken. A second highlight is creating community outreach and partnerships and involve the community to develop owner responsibility and accountability. Community partners and volunteers can educate, assist, and fundraise, provide speakers, and help people become better pet owners. A priority I believe everyone can agree on is expanding low-cost or free spay and neuter services. In conclusion, the situation right now is unacceptable. No one wants to live in fear of their children, pets, or themselves being mauled by dogs. It is time to stand up and take charge of the problem. And I'm providing copies of the action plan to you.
Thank you.
I'm Jackie Iddings. I live in the Avenues. I'm a new resident. I just moved up here in February. Was introduced to Clearlake by the snowstorm. I had a little speech prepared, but what I heard in your report and what I've heard from other people has sort of changed my approach a little bit. I worked with Denise on putting together a little high-level proposal, and I was really encouraged tonight to hear from all of you some of the solutions that we have been talking about, especially Councilwoman Overton. You're talking about a citizens committee, a commission, I think would be a perfect solution. It would relieve short-staffed city of a lot of the research and policy development tasks that you don't have the staff to take on. It could be, most commissions are appointed by the council and from the citizenry, and you know how they work, they rotate. So I think that would be a really good solution, and I'm glad to hear you're talking about it. I'm glad to hear members of the community mentioning it. That's all I'm going to say tonight.
Thank you. No need to raise your hand, just orderly come up to the front.
I'm Jamie Newland. I volunteer in animal control, and I was on the ad hoc committee with the city a few years back. All I have to say is shame on all of you. Shame on the city and the council for allowing this neglect and farce of an animal control to continue. Shame on the PD and Lieutenant Peterson for a so-called investigation that was only done to try to cover the city's ass while also throwing a dedicated former employee under the bus. Today, for the first time, I am ashamed to be a citizen of Clearlake. I'm ashamed that I voted for some of you, a mistake I won't make again. As a tax-paying citizen, I am outraged. I don't know what I was thinking that after all these years, things would be different. The investigation should have been done by an unbiased outside source that actually knows something about animal control, not the PD who is serving the city. And you want to say this?
My name's Melissa Raridan Puente, and I just want to know how many dogs went to the vet this week and what for. And I would also like to know how many were spayed or neutered this week. And then can we get a weekly notification of those things with proof that those things are happening?
Along with the numbers we usually get.
Yeah.
Thank you. To that point, Lieutenant, is that something that can be made public?
I can look into that and let you know later. I wouldn't have those answers for you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Kathy Langless. I just have something real quick that just came. I wasn't going to talk, but something that just came to mind. You're talking about overcrowding in the shelters. To me, we have a law that people are supposed to spay and neuter their animals. That would solve a problem right there. If the animals were being spayed and neutered, we wouldn't have all the overcrowding in the shelters. And that's a ticket, you know. It's simple. And we need more spay and neutering for cats again, please. Because there's people in this town, me for one, and many back there, we're struggling to get these guys done. We need help, low cost, not asking for nothing, but low cost. Please, thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Susie Heidebrecht, and I am a volunteer at the shelter when they have cats. Okay? Charmaine is a godsend, and if they lose her, they're gonna lose the shelter. She bends over backwards for all those animals. I'm partial to cats. I have a ton of them myself. Okay, in regards to the spay and neuter for her organization, they've sponsored a ton of them, but you've got to watch the news, watch your social media, read the posters that are everywhere. They've got something going on, if not every month, every other month. And it's not just her organization. There's a bunch of the rescues out there that come up like from Napa or Sonoma. So it can be done. And granted, I've got some that still have to get done yet too. But my thing is don't downtrod Charmaine. Without her, we'd be lost. She fights for those animals. To heck with the people. She fights for those animals.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Deborah Sally, and I have been a resident of Clearlake for, since 1992. And that's when I came up here and started practicing veterinary medicine. And I have watched a lot of the people in this room who certainly love and care for animals try to work for this situation the entire time I've been here. It's never been easy. There's always been a huge problem with trying to get people to follow the rules of how to take care of their own pets, try to get them spayed and neutered. That's huge. And unfortunately, there's a big problem in that we don't have enough veterinarians to even do all of the spaying and neutering that needs to happen here. I think having some of these other organizations be able to sponsor low-cost groups that might be able to come in and do that is a possible solution for some of that. But still, ultimately, when I talked to Lieutenant Peterson, there's just too many animals for our shelter to be able to handle. And most of you know that I work at the Lake County Animal Control now, and that their policies are very much different. And a no-kill shelter is an ideal situation in an ideal world. But as also Lieutenant Peterson stated, it's just not realistic in most situations. And there has to be big, hard decisions made about which animals are the ones that aren't going to be the ones that get to go out to another home, to a rescue, or to any of those places where we would prefer that they get to go. I do think that we need a better communication between North Bay Animal Services and the people and the council, the whole city here. That would make, I think, a big difference in how things go, and I would love to see that happen. And, we have had an ad hoc committee off and on through the years for animal control, and there has been some benefit to that. But it does take a dedicated group of people who are willing to put out a lot of effort to try to help bring in extra things, and the ability to be able to work with the North Bay Animal Services folks, that everybody does end up working together on those things. And sadly, there's just not the kind of ideal situation for decreasing our animal population if it doesn't include some of those tough decisions. And I know that North Bay doesn't want to make those decisions, but it may be something that, it just needs to be reconsidered at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Council. My name is Charmaine Weldon, and I am a current employee of North Bay Animal Services. I've been out on medical leave ever since I fractured my foot, closing up the shelter by myself in the dark on Valentine's Day, and I really miss being able to go to work at the shelter each day. After reading the report submitted by Lieutenant Ryan Peterson, I hope the council can focus on making changes that will actually help the animals of our community. This is my only priority. I think it's important that our discussions focus on what the animals of our community need from us rather than unrelated personnel issues or the ego of any one individual. The City Council can require that North Bay Animal Services do better by immediately making a few key changes, which this is redundant, but it's in my speech and I timed it. So require the designation of an on-site shelter manager who is tasked with supervising and training kennel staff on proper sanitation protocols. This on-site shelter manager must be empowered to make decisions regarding animal intake and medical care for the shelter animals in cooperation with the leadership at North Bay. To return every single call from the public in a timely manner, and if the shelter is full, offer a list of resources and alternate options. Be honest about the length of the wait list for spay and neuter and the capacity of the shelter so that people understand what they are agreeing to when they volunteer to hold on to an animal temporarily. The citizens of Clearlake deserve better communication and more transparency. In my spare time, I also run the City of Clearlake Animal Association, a nonprofit founded to increase services for local animals, originally to support the shelter. I'd like to clarify that the nonprofit has nothing to do with the overcrowding, spread of disease, or other issues currently happening at the shelter. We have been purchasing bleach, paying for laundry services, and offering free spay and neuter to the community to help alleviate issues where we can. CCAA also offers crisis care and other assistance for animals who are brought to the shelter, but who are being turned away by North Bay, like Cebus, a little stray dog who was brought to the shelter on April 5th. With a painful ruptured eyeball. We also had him neutered when he got his eye surgery. Our goal is to be an asset to the community and add to the basic services that the shelter is providing. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, is there anyone on Zoom that would like to address us?
There is a hand raised on Zoom, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Sabatier.
Supervisor?
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor and council members. Bruno Sabatier, City of Clearlake. I want to commend Lieutenant Peterson for a good report in following up with the complaints that have been received. Very good work and very thorough, and I think that it's very on point as to what needs to happen. You're looking to change behavior within the community. I hope that we can get to that point of changing the behavior, and enforcement is going to be your key component to changing behavior. I also want to offer a conversation. I can't make any promises, but offer a conversation with Jonathan Armis, the Director of Animal Control. I know that sorry for the correlation to this, but with probation and the sheriff and other law enforcement, sometimes there's coordinated efforts. Maybe there can be a similar coordinated effort with Lake County Animal Control, helping out with Clearlake and seeing if we can help you guys out with the avenues. I'd love to offer that conversation and see where that goes. Thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you, Supervisor. All right, so at this point, I'm going to close the public comment section for this. Oh,
There is one more hand now, Mr. Mayor.
okay, thank you.
Ms. Larson, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Elizabeth Larson with Lake County News. I just have a question about the City of Clear Lake Animal Association. Does that have an official status in working with the shelter? I'm not clear on what that organization is, what its function is within the shelter right now.
They're not part of the shelter.
Yes, ma'am, they're not part of the shelter, as I understand. Is that correct, Charmaine? Right. So her answer is not at this time. It was previously.
I would like to clarify too, that even though the name is the City of Clear Lake Animal Association, it has no direct relationship or tie-in with the city government at all.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. Mr. Scott, is there anything you would like to say on this matter?
I think he needs to come up here.
Yeah, if you could step up, sir, and just share that via the mic so people not here and present in the room can hear that. Thank you for coming in tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad there's a lot of people here that are very passionate about animals, and there's a tremendous amount of people that are passionate about animals. We want to work with everybody that's willing to work with us and to help move that ball forward with the City of Clear Lake. It takes a village, as they say, and we need all the help we can get. Lieutenant Peterson did a pretty deep dive investigation into animal welfare. I think he learned a lot more than he had originally bargained for, and it's a lot harder than you think, that's for sure, and it takes a lot of money to make it all happen, and a lot of resources. And we've had a lot of challenges in the beginning, and turnover, and switching, trying to figure out who's going to do what, and how many animals are actually here versus what was originally reported. So there's a lot of that learning curve. Sure, there's a lot for us to move forward on, and like communications, yes, absolutely, we need to call people back. And there's been times when, like, they had said something about officer was bitten, an officer showed up, impounded the dogs, but we didn't call the person back to tell them, so they didn't know. And that's our fault. We should definitely do that. So we're making notes, and we're working with staff trying to figure out how we can better this situation. And I think there was one other question about our dogs spayed and neutered. And dogs can go out fostered, but before they're adopted, they have to be spayed and neutered, and that's what we're trying to do. And I think technically, if you were to go back to August 1st, we've probably spent over $70,000 in vet services. So it's been a jaunt, but we're dedicated. We're here to make this work.
Thank you.
And again, if anybody wants to meet with me and talk with me. in depth, I'm happy
Councilmember
to.
Slotin has a question for you, sir.
Sure.
What is your explanation that there's been only one citation since you took over?
So we had a little bit of learning curve in the beginning when Chief White was originally I think the person getting us on board. And then there was gonna be some possible upgrades to the system, and then our staff was gonna be trained on how to learn the new electronic way was gonna be a possible citation, a way of giving a citation.
For some reason, they're not able to hear you. The mic may not be working.
I'm sorry.
You might have to take it and put it really up to you.
So in the beginning, we had to do a learning curve, learning how to write the citations, how can we give warnings to people instead of just, penalizing them, and maybe that would help. So we had to learn, would that work? That's obviously not been what we would, think is working, so we want to try working with staff to upgrade our warnings to, if you get 2 warnings, you're going to get a citation. Based on if it's a dog that's actually hurting someone, then we'll obviously cite you right then and there. But in order
you've
for
only
an,
done one.
in order for an officer to write a citation, we have to see the dog at large, and that's part of the problem. A lot of times it's reported, and by the time we get there, the dog's already gone, or they go to an address that's not, we don't know where the person actually lives. So yes, there was dogs at large. Yes, someone reported it, but where'd they go? So there's always some of those as well. But we are going to actively try to be more proactive in doing more citations.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. If I could ask everyone in the council chambers to refrain from your comments. I see some people around you, ma'am. I see people waving their arms and doing that. If you could refrain from making your comments, because there's others who are trying to listen nearby, and your talking is keeping them from being able to hear. So again, if we could just have some decorum and be quiet while people are speaking. Councilmember Kramer, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Mr. Scott, there is conversation in the investigation from you that with regard to this communication and the apparent breakdown in supervision on site, I think you indicated that you're training someone that will actually be an on-site at the Clearlake Animal Shelter supervisor that'll be there all the time that can make decisions on site as opposed to needing to call you. Is that happening, and
So
when?
That has been happening, and we do have a person on site that can make those calls based on the situation, obviously. We still employ some people that we were hoping to come back and take that role back on, because that was the original idea, is that this person would lead that charge as they had done for years. So that's still in the works and still can be resolved. It's just hasn't got there yet, but it's still something that we're hoping that will either come back around, and maybe that person will be in charge of cats and the other person will be in charge of dogs. Like, we're just trying to make it as easy as possible for that everybody can have a role to play.
So you say it's somebody that's been doing that in the past? Somebody that's in this room, maybe?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and there was one other question, and I just want to touch base, and again, I'll be here if anyone wants to stay and talk with me so I can answer any questions you have. But they had asked about cats, and we all know that the employee that was there was really good with cats, and she hasn't been there. So we've been transferring a lot of cats down to Petaluma where there's more volunteers, more staff that can house and care for cats, and we have a bigger facility for cats. So right now there's 0 cats in the Petaluma or the Clearlake shelter. We've transferred them, and we made another transfer today with 2 more dogs. So it's an ever-changing problem, and we were pretty close before the 30 dogs came in from the 3 cases. So we're almost there.
Councilmember Overton.
Yeah, I'm just, do you guys have anybody that goes out and patrols the city? We used to do that at least once, quite often, actually. Is that I haven't seen anything like that, so I'm just curious.
So we have 2 officers that do patrol the city. They alternate days, but there's always someone to patrol the city or pick up injured animals if there is an injured animal. I don't know how your situation was relayed. I wrote it down to look into, but there's always an officer on duty to handle that. And there's still an on-call officer if something were to happen after hours.
Okay, well, thank you.
How do you reach that on call?
Through the dispatch police department.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Coffey.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Back to citations, you mentioned that you were going with a warning first strategy. Was that developed by you, by Chief White? Who recommended that strategy?
So I recommended that strategy because that's worked for us in the past in other cities that we work with. Usually a person, it happens, you don't want to, give them a $200 to $500 citation when it's a mistake. Kid leaves the door open, dog gets out, dog gets back. We don't cite them right away. We warn them and try to get them educated on what to do about it. So we've had success with it. So I don't want to not take something that's had success and not apply it and see if it'll work. Well, that was the idea behind it. But clearly here there needs to be, more rules around that.
Have you, and forgive me if I missed this, documented how many warnings you've distributed?
I would have to pull that report. I didn't come with that prepared.
Ballpark?
I mean, we took in 2,300 calls since August. I want to say 300 and some strays, 100 and some seized custody dogs. So when you say warnings on people who've called and said, I see a dog, we go out, we look, there's nobody to give a warning to, so there might be a call for service, but no warning, right? There's nobody to give a warning to. And I can pull a report to see how many active warnings we've had. I just don't know off the top of my head.
That'd be
I don't want
great.
to quote wrong on
My other question is, you lead licensing for pets here in the city. How many dogs do we have licensed right now?
I sent that information to Lieutenant Peterson.
Okay.
I don't know if he's going to.
I just got that information today and was putting it together to provide you, which I'll be giving to Alan to forward after this meeting.
Okay. So when you take in animals to the shelter and then you release them back out to the owners, do you do a licensing check? Do you do a spay and neuter check? And if they are not licensed, do you give them warnings? Why haven't there been citation issued for those instances?
One, there has been changeover with the animal control officer, so each new officers we've had to train. But yes, you're supposed to get a citation or warning that says, hey, your dog's not been altered, or we gave you a warning to get your dog altered and you haven't got it, so we haven't done the citation part. So that's the way it's supposed to work, but we just have had training issues with new staff members.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Mr. Kramer.
Yeah. Follow-up question. You heard Dr. Sally up here talking about, even though it's a hard thing to do, and I brought it up too. I know you're a no-kill, but what is your stance on euthanasia?
So we're a no-kill shelter, as you know, and of course for behavior medical, we do euthanize. If something has been hit and injured and it's suffering, then and that's the vet's recommendation, we will euthanize. That is a possibility. But when it comes to an animal that's living in the shelter or being cared for, staff that have tremendously tried to work with the animal, got it from being aggressive to nice, and then it gets kennel stress and it turns again. To just say, hey, you got 6 weeks, you're out the door, we don't do that. We wouldn't be able to do this contract if that was the rule. We've had someone who, I believe the dog was with us for 6 months, and that person lived in Vallejo, didn't know the dog was up here, and through social media was able to come and redeem their dog after 6 months. Now, if we didn't care for that dog and we just euthanized it after 6 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever a committee deems,
I
that makes it really
understand those
difficult.
situations. How about the aggressive dogs, the pit bull that was running the avenue that one lady was talking about?
So the pit bull that was running the avenues, if you got a severe bite, muscle tears, something that's going to cause injury to a person that they can't come back from. They're not going to just put a Band-Aid on it and it's fine. Severe bites, those dogs we can't adopt out. The first option would be, how severe was it? Can we send it to another rescue that can have more time to rehabilitate it or willing to take on that responsibility? That's the first option. If that's not a case and they have no space for it, then that's something we'll make that decision on. And I think the shelter right now is currently a few of those. So those are the things we're trying to.
And the idea that animals that are in a kennel for an extended period of time, is it true that they basically become kennel, I don't know what's the word for it.
They call it kennel crazy.
Kennel crazy, okay. Yeah. Are they something that after a time, are they have the ability to be adopted? I mean, to me, it's living in a cage for the rest of his life with a half an hour out in the play area doesn't seem like a quality of life.
Quality of life is definitely something that everyone worries about because you want to make sure they're getting the nutrition, they're getting the care, the human interaction. But kennel craze doesn't always mean that they can't come back from that. That could just be who they're around, what other dogs you put next to them. And if we can get them to a different spot or a different facility, that may change pretty quickly.
So at what point do you make that tough call?
That's tough between myself, our behavior staff, and we make those calls, and it's not a fun day.
No,
at the
I'm
shelter.
sure it's not. As I said earlier, I've got a dog and 3 cats, and they mean a lot to me. But there is, at some point, our decision has to be made.
Dr. Sally is exactly right. There is a point that you have to make some tough calls, and we're just about there.
Thank you.
Grilled you enough.
Councilmember Overton, follow up?
Yeah, I just had a follow-up on the question about the licensing and the new reinstating. We did before, somebody came to get their animal when they didn't have that.
Turn your mic on.
Sorry, and they didn't. They weren't spayed and neutered. They didn't license. One, they had to purchase the license before they could even retrieve their animal. Second, they basically got a fine, and if they brought back and proved that they got their animal fixed, then they would get their money back. It might be something you might want to look into. It was working before, years ago, but it worked, so, and then if they didn't, at least you had some money for your time and trouble to go get that dog the
That's
next time
something we
it's
can
out.
certainly look at with the kennel population now.
Yeah.
I think the main thing is if we got an owner, we're trying to get the dog out back to the owner.
So in other
We could
words, what it
follow
is, it just still gives the dog back to, or the animal back to the owner with the responsibility of doing something, and if they didn't, well, you got a little bit of money when the next time you have to go out and get the dog, at least you got something for it. That was our thought anyway when we did that, so.
Something to look at.
Might be bringing that back.
All right. Seeing no other questions from the council, thank you, Mr. Scott, for being here and answering our
Mayor.
questions.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Peterson.
And also thank you to Lieutenant Peterson for a thorough report. Really appreciate the work and effort you put in. Mr. Floor, do you have anything in wrap-up?
Yeah, just really brief. I also appreciate the effort Lieutenant Peterson put in. I know this, I guess, effort is also a lot of time from Chief Hobbs as well and helping deal with his issues. But I think, if you break down the issues that need to be resolved, there's really 4 of them. We've talked about all of them a number of times. We have communication and responsiveness. We have enforcement. We have to have population control. And there's, a number of things related to that. But we do certainly believe that the shelter has more animals in it than it should have. And in particular, the public works shop, direction has been given that all those animals need to be removed and not used in the future. And then, of course, the on-site supervision. So we did have the opportunity last week. Lieutenant Peterson, Chief Hobbs, and myself met with Mr. Scott and the president of North Bay Animal Services Board. We talked about the details of the investigation, the city's expectations and improvement, our support of North Bay in moving this forward and improving the community service that the council expects to be provided. And so just kind of a wrap up, this isn't the end of the road here. We still have a lot of work to do. I appreciate the comments about it's just not something that we can solve on our own. We need a lot of community participation and involvement, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about this in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Floor. Mr. Slotin.
Excuse me, when the courtyard is moved to Burns Valley, what's going to happen with will it be planned for additional shelter space? Or?
We have no current plans to add any shelter space. When we built those new kennels, the intention was to completely replace what was there in the public works shop and not use it anymore. And unfortunately, for I think a couple of different reasons, that never actually ceased. and that needs to happen. It's not adequate. That's why we, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars building a new facility. But, I think, that's maybe a little bit of a different conversation. I think that we need to control the population with the space that we have available.
Is it just from a size of our city compared to similar, is our facilities,
Inadequate?
sufficient or?
Well,
Or do we have-
if you want to break it down, most cities don't run shelters. Counties run shelters. But because of the need in this community, the city council previously has decided that we wanted to run our own shelter. But that's not the most common way that it's operated, really. And I think that if we put 100 new kennels in, we would fill them up next week.
Thank you. Thank you again to staff for the report. I appreciate the thoroughness. Thank you to the community for your advocacy for the animals. Obviously, we have more work to do, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this in the future. I'd like to thank everyone who got up and spoke. We appreciate your opinions, and it does help us to move forward. That said, I'm going to close this agenda item, and we'll move on to city manager and council member reports. Mr. Flora.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, council members, just a few items. Supervisor Sabatier already mentioned the walking school bus, so I won't say much about it, but pretty great event. I'm happy to work with the school district on putting that together on really short notice and with Blue Zones as well. And just proud of the work that Director Laban and Chief Hobbs did in supporting that. We had, the bulk of the city staff participating in that event and making sure it was safe for the kids. I did want to mention that the purchase of the business Valley Glass was recently done, I believe last week. That closed, and so the city has an agreement for them to continue operating that facility for a year. It's Elite Window and Door out of Napa, so I'm sure you'll be seeing those business owners around the community, and hope the community supports them. We did receive notice a couple of days ago. I mentioned a couple of times to the council that we applied for some funding through HCD for the infrastructure infill grant. It was a multi-round grant that we were the only rural community in California to be invited to apply for those funds, and we addressed a number of questions the HCD had, and then I got a letter this week stating that our project was suddenly ineligible for funding. Which was quite frustrating. So looking at whether it makes sense to appeal that determination or not, but at this point, it doesn't look like that over $5 million in funding will be received by the city. We did submit an application for the second round of Clean California. You'll recall that we received approximately $1.5 million last year, the first round of that for litter cleanup, some of the art projects that you're seeing around the city, and signage that hasn't been installed yet, but that we've been working on, the entryway signs and wayfinding signs around town. We wanted to support, there's been sort of a change in the leadership and organization of Citizens Caring for Clearlake. And they requested that we apply for more funds in order to keep the community cleanup days and the free dump days and that type of stuff going. And so, add some additional art stuff. So we agreed to put an application in to support that, and so that was about another $400,000. But we decided, hey, if we're going to apply for $400,000, we might as well apply for the max of $5 million. And so the timing was good with the Lakeshore Drive streetscape plan that we're working on. Those beautification efforts are eligible under this grant, and so the remaining amount of that $5 million, we applied for that. Now, it's not enough to complete the whole project from here down to Old Highway 53, but we think that we can at least get the frontage from here down to Highlands Park done. So we got that in just a few minutes before the deadline yesterday, and looking forward to hopefully being successful. Yeah, it's state money, yeah. There will be additional rounds of that moving forward, so, hopefully we can continue on the successes on that and maybe apply for the rest of the project next year or some other things.
Lobby our representatives in Sacramento.
That would
What are our
always
chances
be helpful.
on that, do you think?
I don't know. I don't know why you would ask me to predict.
And that's,
I want to put you on the spot.
Mr. Fleur, that's HCD money?
No, it's through Caltrans.
Okay. Well, that's better.
Well, barely, but yeah, a little bit. So just a couple other things real quick that I wanted to mention. Because of increased staffing in the police department, Chief Hobbs has directed, we will have an additional officer coming on that will be doing sort of special enforcement in our parks and shopping centers around the city. So they'll be sort of rotating between traffic enforcement, being on the motorcycles and the bikes and whatnot in those areas where we have a lot of activity. So look for that. I think it's a great idea that Chief Hobbs had, and looking forward to that additional contact out in the community. And then we'll follow up on details on that later, but Administrative Services Director Swanson wanted me to mention to you that because of the League of Cities conference, we will likely need to cancel that last city council meeting in September. I believe all of you are planning to attend that in Sacramento. And so, of course, unless you have any concerns with that, let me or Ms. Swanson know, but we'll plan on canceling that. And then, of course, if we have other business that's pressing, we'll have a special meeting as needed. So with that, that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. Councilmember Overton.
I don't really have anything to report. I do want to kind of make an announcement that we're going to be, the Rotary is going to be helping us at the community facility in the community garden. Also, I'm connecting with master gardeners to help us do some things out there. And Debbie Sally is had a $500 grant that she's going to help us do some special planning to bring in some pollination plants and stuff. So, our hope is that we can really expand that to be kind of a showcase for Lake County. I had applied for a grant to help do, Veterans Memorial and a gazebo out there. Unfortunately, I did not get that. Unfortunate, but that's the way it goes when you're in competition with, thousands of people. So, but I'm really looking forward. So on June 17th, I believe it was, we'll be having a cleanup day there. So anybody from the community can come and help us do that. And hopefully by then, my idea is, since I didn't get the grant for an area about there, is to get some really heavy duty pallets, create a floor, put some plywood over it, put some poles up, put a cover over it, and still make a nice area out there. It'll just be recycled stuff, So, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing, right? Recycling everything. So now we're going to be recycling and making a nice area out there for the community. It's not just open for the gardens. It'll be good for the community to be able to go out, and master gardeners will do classes and stuff there. So it'll be open where people can come and have an area to do that kind of thing. So that's what I'm working on right now. So thank you.
Councilmember Slutin.
I attended the tribal health facility openings. I attended the opening for the tribal health facility. It's an amazing building. It's looking awesome, and very interesting that how the money flows through that, as far as I understand. Also, I attended the Lake County Recreation Agency last week. It was, we're trying to get it off the ground, and I think we were trying to balance of how much we should ask for compared to what we want to build, so that's always a challenge. And yesterday I walked from Austin Park to Pomo School. I took up the rear of the place to make sure nobody was left behind. So, and that was they said it was the largest walking school bus in the nation, so it was pretty cool.
Yeah, 'cause
That is-
That's it.
Normally, there's not that many people that do what I've done.
Wished I didn't have a meeting.
It was like 300-plus kids, and then you had probably about 20, 30 adults under supervising it and all that kind of stuff to keep them all kind of in
Running
check.
herd.
Yeah.
We heard
Herding
from a
cats.
lot of city staff that enjoyed being out there, and I
Yeah.
was just talking to Lieutenant Peterson about it earlier. And,
Yeah.
you know, other than only a couple of people that were perturbed about the road being blocked, most
Yeah,
people were out waving, and I think, you know, it was great, so.
Very good. Councilmember Kramer.
Yes, I also attended the Tribal Health grand opening, ribbon cutting. It was a great event. I especially liked the $150,000 grant.
Oh, that's right.
Tribal Health is giving the city for the Burns Valley Recreation Facility, and their kind words about how that's going to help the community. I thought that part was great. That's to be the consortium of 6 tribes in the county. Anyhow, that was one thing. I also, last Saturday, we had our Lower Lake Days Parade and Street Fair. I want to thank Public Works Director Lebney for the supplying our electronic sign and our barricades. That was, they were essential to it being a safe event. So again, thank you so much for that. Chief Hobbs and Lieutenant Peterson and the other officers that were there, and this year's new CSO, and I cannot remember his name at this point. Was there, along with a couple of volunteers. Again, they were also essential to a safe parade and a safe event. And the fact that I think that you cited one of those motorcyclists, that was the cherry on top of the ice cream for me. So thank you so much for all you did on that event. There was one other thing that's escaping my mind right now, so I'll hold it for next time.
Vice Mayor.
Should I pause a moment? No? Okay.
It might come to me.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the grand opening at Tribal Health was absolutely amazing. A very generous donation for the Burns Valley Sports Complex. That is a project that can't get done without a lot of groups in our community coming together. I'm glad that so many folks see the value of that facility, and I'm looking forward to bring all those groups together to complete it and have some really wonderful amenities for our kids in this town. Speaking of kids, the other event I went to was the Lower Lake Senior Day. My goodness, I went to the KEC one the week prior. Just wonderful achievements, so many brilliant, talented kids that we have in this community. We just have to find a way to reel them back after they go off to college and make loads of money. But I'm really so pleased. We got to hand out some scholarships, and I think the future is bright.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I attended no additional meetings, but I did want to say welcome to the Hot Cow. They had a ribbon cutting middle of this week. So excited to see that business up and beginning to thrive. And also like to encourage anyone else looking to start a business, Clearlake is the place to come. Let us know what you'd like to do, and our staff is always welcoming new people to the community or those who have investment ideas, and we can help them find opportunity. The other thing I wanted to ask everyone, I should have maybe done this during our kennel presentation, our animal control presentation, but we need to get the weeds taken down. So if you can do some weed abatement around your house before our code enforcement needs to write you a citation, that would be great. Had a lot of rain this year, as nobody is unaware of that, but with that comes a lot of weeds. Sorry that I missed the tribal health ribbon cutting. Unfortunately, I was out of town, but very grateful for that donation. And that concludes my report. Is there?
She wants a do-over.
Oh, my goodness. Then Kramer's going to want to go.
I remembered what
I figured you would. Okay, keep it short, folks.
I just really wanted to quickly, it was really for our community, big time for our community. We have the Junior Giants back. Please go online for your kids, and we need volunteers and coaches and stuff, to the juniorgiants.com and register. We are also having our kickoff next Saturday. you know, down at the youth center, baseball fields behind there. It's just basically kind of giving the basics of what we do. This is not a competitive thing, and it is absolutely free. And they will get their uniforms. The only thing we don't provide is cleats, which we don't feel they need. So, you know, really encouraging anybody that if you know kids that need that, if you want to volunteer, you don't have to, you know baseball. You'll be taught how to coach. You know, we really need to get some support here because it's kind of like moving slow. So we need to get it going, guys. So put it on your Facebooks and ask people around. I even got a big poster at the senior center talking to my seniors into it. So.
Thanks, Joyce. Councilmember Kramer.
Just wanted to mention, Councilmember Overton was talking about things happening at the senior center. As you know, we're cutting trees, dead, dying oak trees at the cemetery, and instead of letting that wood just go to somewhere else, we decided, actually got the idea from Supervisor Sabatier to cut it up into firewood and make it available to disadvantaged folks that can't afford to buy it or don't have the ability to cut it themselves. And Councilwoman Overton said, gosh, we could do that. I know a lot of people through the senior center, so we're gonna do a coordinated effort to try to give some firewood away later this summer.
Very good. Does that conclude everything? All right. At this time, I'm going to adjourn our public meeting. We will reconvene in 5 minutes.